I was with the 14th Armored Division, and after the war ended, they gave us the name of the Liberators, because in our trip across France and Germany, we liberated so many prisoners, prison camps, hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one hospital we liberated, and the medics came in and tried to give started out by trying to give him some soup and some. I remember one guy died while he was eating the soup.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, a buddy of mine, or an acquaintance of another soldier, went up to Dachau, which is a concentration camp, and he took these pictures. These are dead people from Dachau, and in Berghausen, and in other places too, I assume. In Berghausen, we had all these bodies that we had a cemetery burial, and all of the people in town had to come out and walk by the open caskets, so that they would never forget what happened.
Yeah.
They couldn't say it didn't happen because
you saw.
So
I never knew about that from the history books, just from you.
And this of course is you Germans. And again, it's another picture of the.
They're actually digging the graves, right?
Or else covering them up.
Hmm.
And here are piles of bodies. And here's a crematorium where they burned them. And then I transferred to, the commandant's job was done in Berghausen.
Mm-hmm.
So I transferred to Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which is a great winter resort.
Uh-huh.
Garmisch is where Sonia Henne won her title of.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So I transferred to Berghausen, and out on there's two towns there, so I call it Garmisch-Partenkirchen. Out in Partenkirchen, here's the Zugspitze mountain,
Mm-hmm.
which is the highest mountain in the German Alps, and you were there.
And we went up there in '72.
Took you up there,
Yeah, I remember that.
No, this was partly barracks, but partly dining room. Down here was our dining room. This was our offices, and I had an office on the other side of the building, about here, where I was called sergeant of the valuables room. The valuables, when you take a prisoner, you take their valuables away and you catalog them so they can't say somebody stole them out and so on.
Uh-huh.
That's done here in the States as well as.
Mm-hmm. So you kept track of those things.
Yeah. Now this guy's Arturo Kennenblatt. Arturo was Hitler's butler.
Mm-hmm.
And he waited on tables in the dining room. This is an entrance to this building here.
Mm-hmm.
And Arturo and I became friends, and he wanted me to marry one of his daughters.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You weren't interested.
I said, thanks, but I'm too young.
Mm-hmm.
And that was building where our headquarters were when I was in Garmisch.
So this came from him.
Yes, he made this. He made this on a piece of wood about so big around. And when I left, he gave it to me as a remembrance of him. It's hanging on the wall.
Yeah, it's in the living room. You gave him back something from the room, didn't you?
Well,
the valuables
yes,
room?
Yes, one time when I was in having dinner, he motioned me to come over to the men's room.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want anybody else to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the men's room, he told me that when they took him prisoner, they had taken 2 locks of hair of his 2 twin daughters, and he wondered if he'd get them back, and I said I didn't see why not. So the next day, I called him over to the men's room. Oh, meanwhile, I had noticed that he had holes in his socks, in the heels of his socks.
Mm-hmm.
So The next day I called him over to the men's room and I gave him the locks of his hair,
Of his
And-
daughter's hair.
daughter's hair,
Were they in the valuables room?
and then I gave him the valuables. When I did that, he broke down on my shoulder and cried.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's just a picture of me, and I was smoking in those days.
Look at that.
Now this is in the living room of Hitler's mountain retreat. You heard about his mountain retreat, and it was all bombed out, of course. And because of the light, it didn't count very good. But that's me there, and
Yep.
I've already told you about this picture.
Yeah.
There's Hitler's mountain retreat, and that living room picture there where I was in the living room was over here.
You took a trip up there to see it?
Yeah. It's all been destroyed now. They didn't want to leave any memory or anything that could be a symbol or an idol in the future. So
Yeah.
the whole thing up there was destroyed. It was like a little village. It had everything, greenhouses and
Yeah.
everything they needed for survival, they thought. Here I'm on the ship on the way home.
So that's how you went home from
Le Havre.
Le Havre, France, and went across the ocean. And then, where did you come into the States?
In New York. I discharged.
Let's see, what's the date? March 22, 1946.
That's when I recorded it in Mayville.
Oh, yeah.
At the county, I had it recorded.
You had to go and have it stamped, or?
Yeah, well, they stamped it when I wanted it on record, you know. I didn't
I
want
see.
it just
Right.
floating around anymore. Yeah, all the soldiers, most of the soldiers did that. They had their discharges recorded at the county clerk.
Uh-huh.
I came March 18. Then when they were reviewing their records, way back in October 1959,
Oh,
which is many years later, they sent me this.
more than 10 years, yeah.
The Bronze Star for my work in the Raider Platoon.
Did you know that was going to happen?
No. New York City.
Corporal Joseph D. Horlacher, Private First Class Infantry. Meritorious achievement in ground operations against the enemy. It's very nice.
And for some reason, you got that from New York State.
Quite a bit later.
Yes. That was only a few years ago.
Hmm.
So that's all there is of the
Of the war stuff.
war stuff.
Thanks.